everybody. It's Gretchen Shepherd here with Keeping It Real and tonight's story time. Oh my gosh, so thank you so much for being here. As I told everybody on last night's show, and if you're new tonight, you didn't hear this, but this is a premiere I'm putting out. It's a pre-recorded story because I couldn't be live tonight with you at the regular time, so I didn't want to miss out on sharing this wonderful story tonight and the art that goes with it. So here I am in episode 66 of Keeping It Real. This is the fourth time I've had to go to the point of recording instead of going live. So, but thanks for being here, and I know that you are going to love this story. So part of what I like to do with this is that I have a huge love and passion for children's literature. I've collected it for years. I've gone to book signings. I've haunted bookstores. I've stalked, well, not stalked, but I'm a groupie of a lot of children's authors and collected them for my own kids and also for my own collection and for the schools that I worked at, so that I could share this amazing art form and piece of literature with the kids and have them appreciate it. Tonight, I am going to share a story that I'm sure most of you adults are familiar with, if not in the book form, in the movie form, and if not in the original movie form, but in the newer version of the movie. It's a movie that's been done twice, but the book still holds a special spot. The book I'm reading tonight is, if you didn't miss it on the title, that it said, "Are you ready to finish the game?" That could have been a clue. Plus, there was lions and monkeys and a rhinoceros and a snake in the opening. Have you got the book yet? Do you know? This is the second book that this author wrote. This is his first book he wrote, received the Caldecott honor for his first book ever. This book was the second book he published, and it won the Caldecott Medal, which is the highest honor that a children's picture book can receive in a year. The book is Jumanji by Chris Van Allsburg. I was fortunate enough to meet Chris years ago. I picked up the book, let's see, when it probably first came out, but I met him in 1991, and he was at a bookshop here in Seattle, and I took my kids with me and our stack of Chris Van Allsburg books, and he signed them all, and I got to talk to him a bit, and it was, I think, early on after the Polar Express had come out, and so that was after this, but Jumanji had already been in our collection and is a favorite of ours. Little things about Chris Van Allsburg that make his books special. He has, you'll find a dog in all of his books. The dog is called Fritz, and the dog was actually a dog that was in Chris's life that they had, and he didn't intend to commemorate the dog in all the books, but the dog is in the book. In Jumanji, the dog is a little pull toy, and in The Garden of Abdul Ghazazi, which was his first book, it is actually the dog that kind of starts the whole thing off. In other books, he shows up in various spots. And if you're here on Sunday night for episode 60, which will be tomorrow night, 67, when I read Two Bad Ants, then you will see where the dog shows up that time. It's a very odd spot. But in this book, the dog is a toy. So I'm excited to share this book with you. And let me just show you a bit about it. Pull you there. There we go. Here it is, Jumanji. Now, you'll notice mine does not have the nice book cover because it's been a well-loved book and well-worn, and somewhere along the way, the book cover just did not survive. Let's give it a little space on there. Yeah, and so we have the book, though. And Jumanji is a wonderful story. So, are you ready? If you remember a little bit about, don't jump ahead. And maybe you haven't heard the book, or maybe you haven't read the book and are only familiar with what happened in the 2 different movies that have been made of it. The first movie that Robin Williams was in, I loved. I thought it was great. But I still does not top the book. So, sit back, relax. Well, maybe not relax too much. And hear the adventure of Jumanji by Chris Van Allsburg. Written and illustrated by Chris Van Allsburg. It was published in 1981. Yeah. Very wonderful. Jumanji for Bob, Gretchen, Annalene, and Bryn. Chris Van Allsburg. Yeah. I got it. Now remember, Mother said, your father and I are bringing some guests by after the opera, and we want the house neat. Quite so, added Father, taking his scarf inside his coat. Mother peered into the hall and carefully pinned her pat in place, then knelt and kissed both children goodbye. When the front door closed, Judy and Peter giggled with delight. They took all the toys out of their toy box and made a terrible mess. But their laughter slowly turned to silence till finally Peter slouched into a chair. I'm bored, he said. I'm really bored. Me too, sighed Judy. Why don't we go outside and play? Peter agreed. So off they went across the street to the park. It was cold for November. The children could see their breath like steam. They rolled in the leaves, and when Judy tried to stuff some leaves down Peter's sweater, he jumped up and ran behind a tree. When his sister caught up with him, he was kneeling at the foot of the tree, looking at a long, thin box. What's that? Judy asked. It's a game, said Peter, handing her the box. Jumanji, Judy read from the box. A jungle adventure game. Look, said Peter, pointing to a note taped to the bottom of the box. In childlike handwriting, there were the words, free game, fun for some, but not for all. P.S. Read instructions carefully. Want to take it home? Judy asked. Not really, said Peter. I'm sure somebody left it here because it's so boring. Oh, come on, protested Judy. Let's give it a try. Race you home. And off she ran with Peter at her heels. At home, the children spread the game out on a card table. It looked very much like the games they already had. There was a board that unfolded, revealing a path of colored squares. The squares had messages written on them. The path started in the deepest jungle and ended up in Jumanji, a city of golden buildings and towers. Peter began to shake the dice and play with the other pieces that were in the box. See, there's the dog. Put those down and listen, said Judy. I'm going to read the instructions. Jumanji, a young people's jungle adventure especially designed for the bored and restless. A. Player selects piece and places it in the deepest jungle. B. Player rolls dice and moves piece along the path through all the dangers of the jungle. C. First player to reach Jumanji and yell the city's name aloud is the winner. Is that all? Asked Peter, sounding disappointed. No, said Judy. There's one more thing, and this is in capital letters. D. Very important. Once a game of Jumanji is started, it will not be over until one player reaches the Golden City. Oh, big deal, said Peter, who gave a bored yawn. Here, said Judy, handing her brother the dice. You go first. Peter casually dropped the dice from his hand. 7, said Judy. Peter moved his piece to the 7th square. Lion attacks. Move back 2 spaces, read Judy. Gosh, how exciting, said Peter in a very unexcited voice. As he reached for his piece, he looked up at his sister. She had a look of absolute horror on her face. Peter, she whispered, turn around very slowly. The boy turned in his chair. He couldn't believe his eyes. Lying on the piano was a lion, staring at Peter and licking his lips. The lion roared so loud it knocked Peter right off his chair. The big cat jumped to the floor. Peter was up on his feet, running through the house with the lion a whisker's length behind. He ran upstairs and dove under a bed. The lion tried to squeeze under, but he got his head stuck. Peter scrambled out and ran from the bedroom and slammed the door behind him. He stood in the hall with Judy, gasping for breath. I don't think, said Peter in between gasps of air, that I want to play this game anymore. But we have to, said Judy as she helped Peter back downstairs. I'm sure that's what the instructions mean. That lion won't go away until one of us wins the game. Oh, boy, said Peter. This would upset Mother even more. Oops. I skipped a page. Peter stood next to the card table. Can't we just call the zoo and have him taken away? From upstairs came the sounds of growling and clawing at the bedroom door. Or maybe we could wait till Father comes home. No one would come from the zoo because they wouldn't believe us, said Judy. And you know how upset Mother would be if there was a lion in the bedroom. We started this game, and now we have to finish it. Peter looked down at the game board. What if Judy rolled a 7? Then there'd be 2 lions. For an instant, Peter thought he was going to cry. Then he sat firmly in his chair and said, Let's play. Judy picked up the dice, rolled an 8, and moved her piece. Monkeys steal food. Miss 1 turn, she read. And from the kitchen came the sounds of banging pots and falling jars, and the children ran in to see a dozen monkeys tearing the room apart. "Oh boy," said Peter. "This would upset Mother even more than the lion." "Quick," said Judy, "back to the game." Peter took his turn. Thank heavens he landed on a blank space. He rolled again. "Monsoon season begins? Lose one turn?" Little raindrops began to fall in the living room. Then a roll of thunder shook the walls and scared the monkeys out of the kitchen, and the rain began to fall in buckets as Judy took the dice. Guide gets lost. Lose one turn. The rain suddenly stopped. The children turned to see a man hunched over a map. "Oh dear, I say, spot of bad luck now," he mumbled. "Perhaps a left turn here, then no, a right turn there. No, yes, absolutely. I think a right turn, or maybe—"
Excuse me,"
said Judy, but the guide just ignored her.
"Around here, then over there. No, over here and around this. Yes, good. Yes, that's, but then what? Oh,
Judy shrugged her shoulders and handed the dice to Peter. 4, 5, 6, he counted. Bitten by a tsetse fly? Contract sleeping sickness? Lose one turn? Judy heard a faint buzzing noise and watched a small insect land on Peter's nose. Peter lifted his hand to brush the bug away, but then stopped, gave a tremendous yawn, and fell sound asleep, his head on the table. Peter, wake up!" cried Judy, but it was no use. She grabbed the dice and moved to a blank. She rolled again and waited in amazement. "Rhinoceros stampede, go back 2 spaces." As fast as he had fallen asleep, Peter awoke. Together they listened to a rumble in the hallway. It grew louder and louder, and suddenly a herd of rhinos charged through the living room and into the dining room, crashing all the furniture in their path. Peter and Judy covered their ears as sounds of splintering wood and breaking china filled the house. Peter gave the dice a quick tumble. "Python sneaks into camp? Go back 1 space?" Judy shrieked and jumped up on her chair. "Over the fireplace!" Judy sat down again, nervously eyeing the 8-foot snake that was wrapping itself around the mantel clock. The guide looked up from his map, took one look at the snake, and moved as far to the corner of the room, joining the monkeys on the couch. Judy took her turn and landed on a blank space. Her brother took the dice and rolled a 3. "Oh no," he moaned. "Volcano erupts. Go back 3 spaces." The room became warm and started to shake a little. Molten lava poured from the fireplace opening. It hit the water on the floor and the room filled with steam. Judy rolled the dice and moved ahead. "Discover shortcut. Roll again." "Oh dear," she cried. Judy saw the snake unwrapping itself from the clock. "If you roll a 12, you can get out of the jungle," said Peter. "Please, Judy begged as she shook the dice. The snake was wriggling his way across the floor. She dropped the dice from her hand. 1 6, then another. Judy grabbed her piece and slammed it to the board. "Jumanji!" she yelled as loud as she could. The steam in the room became thicker and thicker. Judy could not even see Peter across the table.
Then, as if all the doors and windows had been opened, a cool breeze cleared the steam from the room. Everything was just as it had been before the game. No monkeys, no guide, no water, no broken furniture, no snake, no lion roaring upstairs, no rhinos. Without saying a word to each other, Peter and Judy threw the game into its box. They bolted out the door, ran across the street to the park, and dropped the game under a tree. Back home, they quickly put away all their toys. But both children were too excited to sit quietly, so Peter took out a picture puzzle. As they fit the pieces together, their excitement slowly turned to relief and then to exhaustion. With the puzzle half done, Peter and Judy fell sound asleep on the sofa. "Wake up, dears," Mother's voice called. Judy opened her eyes. Mother and Father had returned, and their guests were arriving. Judy gave Peter a nudge to wake him. Yawning and stretching, they both got to their feet. Mother introduced them to some of the guests, then asks, "Did you have an exciting afternoon?" "Oh, yes," said Peter. "We had a flood and a stampede, a volcano. I got sleeping sickness and—" Peter was interrupted by the adults' laughter. "Well," said Mother, "I think you both got sleeping sickness. Why don't you go upstairs and put on your pajamas? Then you can finish your puzzle and have some dinner." When Peter and Judy came back downstairs, they found their father had moved the puzzle into the den. When the children were working on it, one of the guests, Mrs. Budwing, brought them a tray of food. "Oh, such a hard puzzle," she said to the children. "Daniel and Walter are always starting puzzles and never finishing them." Daniel and Walter were Mrs. Budwig's sons. They never read instructions either. "Oh, well," said Mrs. Budwing, turning to rejoin the guests, "I guess they'll learn." Both children answered, "I hope so." But they weren't looking at Mrs. Budwing. They were looking out the window. Two boys were running through the park. It was Danny and Walter Budwig. And Danny had a long, thin box under his arm. And that's the story of Jumanji. I hope you enjoyed it. It's really quite amazing to hear about how Chris Van Allsburg developed this. A lot of you guys on here are artists, and we all love art in so many ways. He actually went to school, a school of fine art, and he was working as a sculptor when it was suggested to him that he might try illustrating children's books. And the story of the Garden of Abdul Ghazazi came to him. And I think it's the first picture in that book is only the third illustration of that kind that he'd ever done. He was a sculptor. And it's amazing the body of work that has come from that. And he just came up with these ideas and is truly such a treasure of children's literature. His books are absolutely fantastic, and it is always so much fun to read his books aloud and to then sit back and investigate all the pictures and how the details that he has in them. Underneath you can see the train there. These are a lot of this was done in charcoal or pencil, different kind of mediums that he does. But I love it. The black and white photographer in me and the film photographer in me absolutely loves these. It has that quality to it. I love the lion
lion stuck underneath the bed. That's the way to go. Lion stuck under the bed. Well, I hope you enjoyed tonight's story and art. And thank you for joining me. If you are catching this on a replay, I do this almost every night. I've got a bunch of them. I hope you can come and see some other ones or see me live. So until the next time, you know what I have to say, and that is keep looking for the beauty hidden in plain sight. And if you have a hard time finding it, the first place to go look is in the mirror, because it's right there, and then you'll see it everywhere. So until next time, everybody, take care and have a great night.